Hi, my name is Kaylani, and this week I did my reading reflection in a different type of way. I did a Canva newsletter. Thought I'd be a little more artistic this week. So I'll go ahead and walk you through the newsletter I created. Here we have the table of contents with each chapter that we're supposed to read this week. The newsletter is called The Power of Support. Specifically, this issue is the importance of peer supports for students with disabilities. So the first 3 pages are on chapter 2 from Mastropieri and Scruggs. The first quote is, "Depersonalized conversations avoid negative comments that might be offensive and instead emphasize a goal." So in this quote, it's pointing out that educators should point out when educators are pointing out areas where students can improve, it's important to use language that avoids offensive remarks and instead emphasizes a goal for the student to reach. This is significant because it demonstrates that when educators refocus their input that highlights objective data and solutions, students will feel more encouraged to accept help and to help themselves. Personally, I can connect to this because it is something that I'm still learning how to do. It can definitely be hard to unlearn speaking through descriptions, but I've learned it's important that educators are able to separate who a student is from the behaviors they might do. So moving forward in my educational career, I hope to continue to perfect my use of this type of language. And educators definitely need to learn how to use depersonalized language because the way that adults speak to children have a profound impact on their self-esteem. So I have this little graphic here, and when we verbalize negative descriptions, such as saying, "You don't care about school" or "You're lazy," kids can internalize that, and we don't want them to believe that those negative descriptions are true about them. So instead saying, "I noticed that you're missing 7 assignments, what can we do to improve that?" Here laying out an objective observation and trying to work towards a goal. The next quote is an active listening strategy, so the LAFF, which is listen, ask questions, focus on the problem, and find a first step. So this is for when educators communicate with parents, and it is important to engage in active listening in order to communicate with families that the success and happiness of their child is at the forefront of the teacher's mind. This is significant because it demonstrates how to empathetically listen to parents, and it provides a structure to situations that are often unpredictable. So I can relate to this learning because I'm still learning how to talk to parents. Parent-teacher communication can definitely be scary because you don't want to rub a parent the wrong way unintentionally. So I can definitely connect to finding a first step because it's been my experience that parents talk to teachers for 2 reasons. 1, they just may need to vent, and 2, they're looking for a solution. So moving on, I hope to, use this acronym to improve my active listening skills and to really highlight that finding a first step aspect of LAFF. And this is because it's important for educators to communicate with parents and communicate to the parents that, as they said, their child's needs are what we care about at the end of the day. When the parent can trust the educator and when the parents feel like they can openly express their concerns, then we can work towards solutions. The next one is short-term objectives are required only for students who take alternative assessments. Long-term annual goals are based on the case conference committee's judgment of what the individual student should accomplish within a year. This is pretty straightforward, the differentiation between short-term and long-term goals. I can definitely connect to this because I work with students with IEPs to obtain their long-term goals. And how do you obtain long-term goals? You break them up into short-term goals. So definitely having goals for your students to achieve and to not set low expectations for them, especially our students with disabilities, is very important in order to give them equitable education. Now we're going into chapter 9, First quote, peer social initiation refers to procedures intended to enlist peer assistance in promoting social interaction with withdrawn students, including students with autism. So in this sense, this is a strategy that educators can use to promote inclusion, which involves students, befriending other students who may be too shy or may not understand social situations as well. So I can definitely connect to this because working with kindergartners, my student's first day of kindergarten, he was very shy, didn't want to interact with anyone, didn't really know how to interact with other people. So really having other students in the class and pushing them into welcoming the student who may feel like they don't belong goes a long way into opening the doors to provide a quality education for them. The next quote is, tutoring can be helpful in addressing diverse learning needs in inclusive classrooms. However, when using peer tutoring, monitor the effectiveness of the intervention and be prepared to adjust the program as needed. I especially like this quote because it has this however statement. It's definitely important that teachers understand the limitations of peer tutoring because class and student dynamic is constantly changing. So educators need to be ready to switch up support programs when necessary and need to make sure to closely monitor tutoring programs to ensure that short-term goals are being reached and progress is being made. So if a tutoring situation isn't working, it's important that a teacher realizes that as soon as possible so that we're not wasting any time or valuable resources here. Next, we have teachers have made several suggestions regarding cooperative learning, including the following: plan for increased teacher preparation and transition time, increase allotted time for lessons, and work to reduce any student anxieties about working together and teaching one another. So I definitely enjoyed this learning because it did provide these solutions to better initiate cooperative learning. Definitely as a high school student, I did not enjoy cooperative learning because I felt like I didn't learn anything and I felt that I didn't know how to teach other people how to learn things. So all in all, it was not a good experience. So I hope to use these strategies and information to make collaborative learning a beneficial strategy for my students. I want to make sure that students are given the resources they need and are ready to support and learn from each other, especially when it comes to ensuring the success of our students with disabilities. So I feel like cooperative learning is very beneficial, but you need to put in the work to make this type of learning beneficial for all students. Now I'm moving into the reading of Professor M. Brooks, Chapter 3. So this first quote, depending on the student's needs, a full-time support staff should fade when possible with the goal of the student to become increasingly independent. This really resonated with me because I am a full-time support staff member and I did not start as a full-time support staff member. I actually started in aftercare. So when I was given this new position, I definitely did not know what to do. And I thought that my job was to babysit my student, and that was not the case. So after many trainings and taking classes such as this, I now know that the ultimate goal for my students is to increase their independence because I'm not going to be with them forever. They're not going to have mom and dad next to them in school. If I want my students to succeed, then I really need to foster this sense of independence so I know that they can help themselves and ask for help when they need it. Next is natural supports refer to students enrolled within the same classroom who are able to naturally provide guidance to each other as needed. Effective teachers build in expectations about helping, so it is part of the classroom climate. I really enjoyed this quote because it kind of touches back to what we've been learning in the previous weeks, where if we make it a norm to help each other and to be understanding and accepting of each other's differences, then students will take the initiative themselves to help students with disabilities or students who may be struggling. So definitely moving forward, when I have a classroom, I love the idea of having helpfulness and tolerance be a classroom norm. It is important for educators to use natural supports because it provides a plethora of benefits to all students. For instance, students enhance their academic skills by tutoring each other, students develop their social skills by collaborating with each other, and students develop positive characteristics that will help create the next generation of world changers. And that really is something that, motivates my teaching. Next quote is, parallel co-teaching occurs when two individuals teach two separate groups of students by splitting the class in a variety of ways. Supportive co-teaching consists of one person taking the lead and delivering instruction while the other person moves throughout the rooms supporting students. So this learning is pretty much two different types of co-teaching. I chose these two in particular because these are the types of co-teaching that I have experience with. More so with Zoom, we do a lot of parallel co-teaching with the breakout rooms where I'll have students and the main teacher will have students. But when we're in-person teaching, we have more of the supportive co-teaching style. I think it's definitely important for educators to utilize these different methods because, one, it benefits the teachers because teachers will be able to learn from each other and collaborate to find teaching strategies that work best for each student. And then, two, for students, especially students with disabilities, students will have the opportunity to receive more individualized instruction and be able to learn knowledge through different methods and feel a stronger sense of belonging to different students and staff members. And moving on to the final chapter, the first quote here is, meaningful relationships with students in the classroom are paramount. Make it a priority to become familiar with the students' learning style and preferences. Converse with them. This is definitely something that I believe is at the core of teaching, is to get to know all your students. Students definitely notice when their educators are taking a genuine interest in their lives, and that interest goes a long way into opening doors of trust and then being able to provide the student with a quality education. Personally speaking, I worked really hard to create these relationships, especially with my students with disabilities. They love talking to me about Legos or talking to me about cartoons. And when they're open to talk to me about their interests, I can use those interests to help guide, me helping them in their education. The next quote is that it is important that families have opportunities to engage with a variety of school members and a consistent avenue of communication with their children's education teams. Parents know the student best and are valuable resources for the education team. This is definitely an important piece of information. Families are a valuable resource when it comes to our students' education. As the quote says, the parents know the student best. And students may act differently at home than they do in school. And those differences could be important information that the teacher needs to provide the student with quality and effective education. So not only do teachers benefit by being able to, better teach their students, but families also really enjoy that sense of trust that, yes, this teacher is here to help my child. And lastly, co-planning is when everyone decides who's doing what. This communication helps teachers avoid creating adaptations that repeat those of other staff members. Love this learning because this is something that I'm still working on. Definitely in the beginning, I was someone who wanted to make my own resources and wanted to do everything on my own. And I just do not have the time for that, nor the mental sanity to do any of that. So really being able to lean on other teachers, dividing up work, sharing resources is a benefit to everyone, to teachers, to students, or students with disabilities. Speaking from experience, the teachers that I work with have vast amount of knowledge and resources that have helped me better help my students with disabilities because they have the experience that I don't have yet. And I think that's really important, to be able to trust your team and therefore provide better education for your students. And that's my newsletter. Really long. That was just summaries, chock full of information. Give it a read. Thank you.